for Dragon.
Okay, Serena, Dragon has begun the approach from 30 meters. Monitor for step 5 and 1.102.
Copy, step 5.
You heard that Dragon has been given the go-ahead to approach again to 10 meters. Dragon and the International Space Station are currently over Ukraine. However, it looks like it's a little bit cloudy down on the Earth, so we're not seeing too many land features there. But still a beautiful view of the Dragon as it holds, or as it begins its approach from 30 meters to 10 meters for its eventual grapple.
That's right, this 10-meter point, that's the final kind of checkpoint gateway that we'll see today. And then Dragon's done moving, and it's time for the robotic arm to spring into action. It's going to be Alex Gerst. He's the commander on board the space station. He's the one at the controls. You're going to hear Serena Anand-Chancellor, a NASA astronaut, on board. She's backing him up, and she's going to be relaying kind of status updates as Dragon makes this final approach to the teams down in Houston. And then once it arrives again at that 10-meter hold point, it'll go into its free drift, and then it'll be over to Alex to control that arm to reach out and capture Dragon.
You can see on the right-hand side of your screen that is a camera at the end of the Canadarm, that 57-foot robotic arm. It extends out from the station, and as Dragon gets closer and closer, we'll see it grow larger in that frame of view. And then when the Dragon stops, it'll be up to the arm to move into that capture point. You can actually see, this is a great shot right here. It shows just how close we are to capture. This is from another point on the International Space Station looking towards the Dragon and that arm. And it may be tough to distinguish the movement of the Dragon apart from the rotation of the Earth underneath it, but it is moving right now. Like we've said many times during this webcast, slow and steady wins the race here.
With you on 2.
Okay, the views on monitor 1 and 3 are the same. Everything is pretty much centered up except the vehicle is about, and the strobe is about half a width forward.
Okay, copy all. Thanks, Serena.
And for those that have been following along, this is a camera actually inside the International Space Station pointing at the screen that the crew is using to monitor Dragon's approach. So this is exactly what the crew is looking at this very moment. And there's a number of overlays on it. You'll hear them talk about things being about half a width out. You can see kind of an outline of Dragon. As it does this approach, it usually won't be exactly inside of there. They have a kind of a range that they're looking for Dragon to be around. And as you heard Serena Anand-Chancellor radio down, it's about half a width outside there. But the team's expecting that, and everything's still good with Dragon's approach. And as soon as we reestablished that communication, they did work really quickly to get through the paces and get Dragon moving once again. We are coming up on a sunset in just about 8 minutes or so. So once again, lighting conditions will kind of come into play. But as long as everything proceeds smoothly, we should be moving in on a capture and not have to wait for another lighting condition. But it could happen. And again, Dragon can definitely just kind of hold out. As we've said over and over, and Tom just said again, slow and steady is going to win the race today. We're going to get this Dragon captured and attached to the space station with all 5,600 pounds of cargo on board.
As we approach that sunset, Dragon is free to approach right now to the 10-meter hold, and that isn't exactly dependent on the sunlight conditions, but the grapple action is dependent on the sunlight conditions. The crew at the International Space Station is only going to grapple it if it's freely visible inside the sun, and right now we are rapidly approaching that sunset. You can actually see the Earth darkening underneath on this view right here. Approaching that Terminator line.
Yeah, and the station and Dragon just flying just to the north of Kazakhstan. They're actually just a couple hundred miles to the northwest of Baikonur. Anyone who follows the space station, that's where a lot of launches come out of. And actually, the first piece of the space station launched just a little over 20 years ago. But they are over that Terminator line, as Tom was talking about. The Earth being shrouded in nighttime beneath now, as they are a couple 100 miles up in the air, though, about 253 statute miles right now. So it'll take a little bit longer for the sun to set on Dragon and the station than it does on planet Earth. But Dragon's still continuing in towards that 10-meter capture point.
These lighting conditions are actually sometimes what helps you to see it from the ground is when it's dark where you are on the surface of the Earth, but the station is still lit up by the sunlight being.
And just to recap what's still ahead after Dragon gets captured. So the crew will capture Dragon, and then they hand over control of the robotic arm down to the ground. So those flight controllers down in Mission Control Houston will then maneuver Dragon using that robotic arm, sending commands from the ground to actually swing it around and eventually attach it to the Earth-facing side of the Harmony module. The crew is scheduled to open up the hatch tomorrow, and since we are a little bit delayed in the capture operations today, that'll probably hold true unless they, again, work really quickly to get that open. But once the hatches are opened, it kicks off a couple of weeks of really intense activity for the crew on board the station, which right now is at a full 6 crew members, with the arrival of 3 a little bit earlier this week. And there's a lot of science. Packed on board Dragon, about 2,200 pounds, so over a ton that they're going to have to unload, and then they're going to execute a lot of those experiments while Dragon's still attached to the space station, because it then gets loaded back on and then delivered right back down to planet Earth. So there's really not a lot of time for other activities. Anytime a Dragon arrives, it's all science pretty much all the time.
And in addition to those supplies and science on the inside of the Dragon module, there are those 2 really exciting experiments that are in the trunk, the unpressurized cargo portion. And of course, along with those preparations that happen as soon as the Dragon's finished berthing, the Canadarm will be used to again go and pick up those experiments out from the back of the trunk and then mount them to their respective places on the outside of the space station.
Yeah, those operations will typically take a couple of days, and those are all controlled by the ground. So these are people sitting in a control room controlling a giant robotic arm 250 miles above their heads, pulling science experiments out of a spacecraft. I mean, it's really cool to think about, but it'll take a couple of days to pull both of those out on both the JEDI, and I always have to look at this one, the Global Ecosystem Dynamics Investigation, and I'm not as on my acronym game as Tom has been today. But they'll be pulling out JEDI and the robotic refueling mission number 3. This is the 3rd phase of that experiment to be taking place on the outside of the International Space Station, testing a lot of technologies to refuel spacecraft and satellites while they're in space, even those that were never designed to be refueled before. So really exciting research being done, really cool technology demonstration.
Round 2 for Dragon Gopher capture windows.
Sounds like we're getting an update on our capture windows coming up for the crew.
Houston, we are ready.
Okay, Serena, our intention here is to get you guys a Gopher capture no earlier than 12:18. However, that window expires at 12:23, so we've got a 5-minute window there for Gopher capture. And if we don't make that window, then we're going to hold at the capture point, and then the next window opens for Gopher capture at 12:39.
Copy 12:18 to 12:23, and the next window after that, 12:39.
That's a good readback.
All right, so those times that you just heard relayed up to Serena on Chancellor. So the International Space Station operates in Greenwich Mean Time. When you have control centers all around the globe and the space station circling the globe, we had to basically come up with what time zone are we in, and everybody had to stick to it. So we settled on one time zone, Greenwich Mean Time, GMT, and so those are the times you're hearing relayed up. So with that capture window being given as 12:18, it's just a little after 1200 right now, so that's coming in about 15 minutes from now. They'll have to have Dragon at that capture point and everything ready to go with the crew and the arm to kind of hit that last minute lighting window. If they're not able to do that, they'll just kind of stand down for about 15 minutes or so, and then at 12:39 GMT, so in about 35 minutes from now, they'll get the go again to reach out and capture the Dragon.
Even though the Dragon and the International Space Station are currently over a darkened part of the Earth, which you can see in the background, they are still illuminated, being 400 kilometers up. This is still giving us enough light to work with, hopefully, here. It also gives you enough light to see the features on that Dragon, and when we get a direct-on shot from the Canadarm, you can even see the grapple point straight ahead, right in the middle of the Dragon spacecraft. That Dragon just continues to get closer to the ISS cameras, filling up more and more of the view. Dan and I have been now watching the Dragon for the ISS and the Dragon for a few orbits. We've seen it cover almost all the major continents on the globe. Right now, they're currently flying over northern China.
Yeah, Dragon getting really close now to this 10-meter point. This will be the second time around, but last time they had to back off while they worked a ground issue with, you heard it called TDRS a lot. That's the Tracking and Data Relay Satellites. That's how we actually have communication with the International Space Station, and they had an issue with those systems on the ground that eventually got resolved. And as you can see, we're back in communication with the space station, obviously, as we're getting this live video down. But everything, again, continuing to progress smoothly. This another peek inside the interior of the space station, looking over the crew's shoulder at the monitor that they're using to watch Dragon during this final approach. And as soon as it hits that 10-meter point, it'll be over to the crew to get the go to capture, reaching out with that robotic arm, and, fixing to the grapple fixture, and then we are just about at that capture point.
This is the second approach of the Dragon tonight, but it is not the first time this Dragon has visited the International Space Station. As we said before, this is a reused Dragon spacecraft. First flew in the CRS-10 mission back in February of 2017.
So yeah, Dragon getting closer and closer. This is a camera view we're going to see a lot of, and especially as that arm starts moving in, because this is a camera sitting right on the end of the space station's robotic arm. That robotic arm called the Canada Arm 2, and this is sitting right on top of what's known as the LEE, and that's an acronym that stands for the Latching End Effector. That's essentially the hand of the space station's robotic arm. It's used not only to hold the robotic arm, there's one on either side of it, so one end right now holding itself to the International Space Station, the other going to be used to grapple with that Dragon spacecraft. This arm, very versatile, used for a whole bunch of different operations, not only just capturing spacecraft, but also flying spacewalking astronauts around, and was used to build the International Space Station piece by piece. So it's under the control of astronauts on board right now, who got it into its current position just a little while ago when we started all of these final rendezvous procedures. And it's going to be Alex Gerst inside, the current station commander, who's going to be controlling this arm, driving it in and capturing Dragon out of the sky.
That end effector is going to be mating with the grapple point on the Dragon, and you can see that that is on the inside of that GNC, or Guidance, Navigation, and Control door. For launch and re-entry, that door is normally closed, flipped around and sealed up. On the outside is the same thermal protection system material that we have on the outside of the Dragon that helps protect it from the atmosphere and from that re-entry heating. And the reason that the grapple point is on the inside is because it's not a perfect aerodynamic surface, and because it's a sensitive thing that the ISS needs to grab onto, we want to protect it during ascent and then re-entry. So it's tucked away on the inside.
Station Houston on Space Ground 2 for Dragon.
Go for Dragon.
Okay, confirm capture point hold for step 6 in 1.102.
Copy, step 6 in work.
All right, so Dragon is at that capture point once more. This kind of feels familiar, Tom, but it is sitting 10 meters away from the International Space Station right now. So what the teams are going to do is quickly do their go, no-go polls again, making sure that everything's good on the station side and on the Dragon systems to give the crew the go to actually reach out now with that station robotic arm and capture the Dragon.
Houston Station on 2, capture conditions confirmed and crew ready for Dragon capture.
And Station Houston on Space to Ground 2, you are go for the capture sequence. Perform step 4 in 1.110 Dragon capture. Begin monitoring the back away cue card.
All right.
Houston, copy, go for capture. Just clarifying, we thought 12:18 would be the time of the opening window.
Yeah, we were more efficient than planned, Serena.
Copy that, Houston, go for capture.
All right, well, those are exactly the words we wanted to use. Everything is now go for capture. So the crew's going to start working through some final steps, and any moment now we're going to start seeing that robotic arm in motion. So now we're just moments away. So it took a little while to get here. We overcame a couple of issues with our ground communications, but now we're here. Dragon's just 10 meters away, and it's time to capture.
We heard more efficient than expected. That sounds great to me.
Always good to hear.
Dragon is now filling up most of the view of those cameras, especially the one on the end of the Canadarm. We're going to see it get very close to that grapple point on the GNC bay door. As we mentioned earlier, at this point, Dragon's actually not doing any more moving. It is holding at the 10 meters point, and from now on, it is the station crew moving the Canadarm towards the Dragon.
That's right. They're gonna close in. It's a very, just like everything else so far, it's a very slow and methodical process to drive that Canadarm in. And once it makes that initial contact, it'll get kind of a light hold on it, and then a series of snares will draw that grapple fixture all the way into the robotic arm, giving them a tight hold on the spacecraft, at which point the crew is done with their activity for now, and they hand over to the ground to actually maneuver Dragon using that robotic arm and attach it to the Earth-facing side of the space station on the Harmony module, also known as Node 2.
Now, my experience has mostly been with the Dragon spacecraft approaching the International Space Station, but Dan, I imagine you've seen a lot of vehicles visit the ISS and have a lot of experience seeing not only Dragons, but Soyuz, Progress, all the visiting vehicle family of the International Space Station come to dock and berth.
Yeah, and it's always interesting because they all kind of have their own little differences between how they do that. Obviously, with today being a berthing, so you have the grapple portion of it, whereas with like a Soyuz or a Progress, it's all a docking and they just kind of drive straight in. I typically tend to prefer those personally, just because they're usually a little bit quicker. But I mean, they're always interesting operations. Like, it's still space flight, it's still crazy stuff happening 250 miles above us. But it's always fun to see a vehicle arrive at the space station. It always means a flurry of activity, both before, during, and after. So especially with Dragon here now for the crew, they're going to be really busy, and there's going to be a bunch of new science experiments that they're going to bring off and work on. And those are always interesting to track along, working on all these different disciplines, from monitoring the Earth below us to doing new research on drug breakthroughs and things of that nature as part of the U.S. National Labs. So yes, it's always interesting to see a vehicle get there, just because of all of the other kind of the cascade of events that it always brings with it.
It is pretty cool that we have this international laboratory that has so many different types of vehicles coming to visit. It really kind of shows how much of a collaborative effort it is between all the nations of the Earth and ones that are involved in the International Space Station. Everyone kind of pulling their weight and to bring up science and humans to and from. It's pretty cool.
Traffic's been busy too. I think this is about the 4th vehicle to arrive at the space station within the last couple of weeks. We had a Cygnus a little while ago, a Russian Progress vehicle, a Russian Soyuz spacecraft just earlier this week arrived on Monday, and now a Dragon. So it kind of feels like the end of the year, we're getting towards the holidays, but nope, the traffic always picks up for the space station.
All the kids are coming home.
Yeah, everyone's coming home. And this isn't even the end of the year. This isn't even the last kind of big thing for the year. So Dragon's going to attach, and then 3 of these crew members are coming home in just about 12 days. 3 of them, including Alex Gerst and Serena Anand-Chancellor, who are doing this activity. They're actually scheduled to land along with Sergei Prokopyev coming up on December 20th. So for them, it's going to be a heck of an end to their mission. They've been on board the space station since June earlier this year, so
That's
wrapping
crazy.
up about 6 months for them. They were originally scheduled to come home a little bit earlier, but everything got kind of rescheduled with the Soyuz flight schedule. But yeah, this will be kind of the last thing capping off their time on board the space station. This was Serena's first flight, and this was actually the second for Alex Gerst. But we're almost at that capture. That station robotic arm going to slowly start maneuvering in. Again, it's Alex Gerst at the controls. He's using, it's kind of like video game controls. It's a joystick and a hand controller inside the space station. So he's going to be driving in, Serena Anand-Chancellor backing him up, making sure everything looks good with all their measurements and their camera views on Dragon, and also doing the voice comms with the ground. But you can see it ever so slightly getting closer now.
That view from the cupola must be unbelievable. I don't know how I'd be able to get anything done with a view like that on my window.
Every single one of them says, you ask them what do they do with their free time, and they go just spend time looking out the window. If you've ever seen any video from the space station or any of the really crazy time lapses they've done of planet Earth, pretty much all of those get taken from that cupola module. And it's this big 360-degree bay window that we use for a lot of Earth observations, but it also provides a wonderful vantage point for operations like this. It's right near the docking port or the berthing port where Dragon's ultimately destined for, and it provides a stellar view of all of the operations of these arriving spacecraft.
It's got to be one of the biggest windows ever flown in space on that cupola or something similar to that.
It's definitely up there. It's larger than any other window on the International Space Station. It's actually a series of a bunch of different window panes, all in one kind of small module. Any Star Wars fans out there, it looks kind of like the window on a TIE fighter, if you will, and it provides this 360-degree panoramic view of the Earth below, and also spacecraft. But for now, we're getting closer. We're just a couple of meters away now. You can see that grapple fixture right in the center of the crosshairs now, and this is a view from the end of that station robotic arm.
We are actually close enough now that you can see the movement of the Canadarm. Too slow or too far away to see the slow movements before, but we are definitely approaching that grapple point.
And hearing we're less than a meter away.
You can see on the left how far that arm has come. It's right up against the side of the Dragon now.
All right, we're going to stand by for that initial capture. Here we have a good alignment. The capture's been commanded. All right, and that is a capture. Capture coming at 4:21 a.m. Pacific time, 6:21 a.m. over in Houston. That's where my computer's time is set to, but that capture's confirmed again 4:21 a.m. Pacific time, with the space station flying 250 statute miles to the north of Papua New Guinea, just out over the Pacific Ocean. We got it. We got it.
Finally, we did it.
But so again, Dragon's captured. We'll stand by for a little bit. Usually the crew likes to offer some words, but they were able to do that successfully. Once they recovered from that ground communication issue, the teams got through all their procedures real quick, and now Dragon within the grasp of the Canadarm2, and just one step closer to being attached to the International Space Station. And now that they have that kind of initial grasp, oh wow, that's actually spectacular. So that is a thunderstorm down on planet Earth that we're seeing flash there in the background. That's not something you see every day.
I was going to say, that's pretty spectacular. Definitely worth waiting for, right?
And hearing confirmation, the snare is now retracted all of the way. Dragon firmly in the grasp of that Canadarm2.
This has been an end to it's been an exciting journey for the Dragon spacecraft. It launched from Cape Canaveral back on Wednesday morning, and is finally now completing its outbound journey to the International Space Station. And like we said before, this is the second time this Dragon has made its way to the ISS.
Jefferson Station on 2. We have confirmed capture. The arm is safe, and the International Space Station Expedition 57 crew would like to congratulate NASA, SpaceX, and the international partners for a successful launch and capture of the 16th SpaceX Dragon cargo resupply mission, enabling the ISS program to continue performing its science program on this unique laboratory in Earth orbit. Also, we congratulate the entire ISS team for managing 6 individual spaceships that will be simultaneously docked to the International Space Station from today on. This shows what a successful science and exploration program we have up here, making full use of the one and only microgravity laboratory that humanity has available for the benefit of all humans on planet Earth.
Yeah, Houston copies and concurs. Thank you, Alex.
All right, so some great words from Alex Gers, who just executed that capture. Again, that capture coming at 4:21 a.m. Pacific time, 7:21 a.m. for anyone watching over on the East Coast. But Dragon now in the hands of the crew on board the International Space Station. Well, on behalf of SpaceX and NASA, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, either staying up late or waking up early for today's webcast. Now that Dragon's reached the International Space Station, it's set to return in January. But first, the spacecraft has to get bolted onto the station, then the hatch gets opened, and that'll happen a little bit later, and you can go head over to NASA TV to watch that berthing operation.
Thanks again for watching. Thanks, Dan, for joining us here at SpaceX headquarters.
Thanks for letting me crash.
Oh, no problem. Please be sure to follow SpaceX and NASA on social media for updates on the CRS-16 mission currently in progress. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great night or morning.